Hello and welcome to BrainAdvizor. I'm Jason Potney, creator of BrainAdvizor, and we have a special treat for you today. We are with Bob Emmons, PhD, who is the leading scientific expert in the field of gratitude. Bob, I would applaud. I just don't want to affect the audio. Laughter is a great way to affect the audio, though. How are you doing today, sir?
Doing great. Grateful to be with you.
Awesome. Well, I would like to continue your introduction by letting our audience know that you are also professor at the University of California's Davies for psychology there. And a wonderful contribution that I know a lot about is your editor-in-chief role with the Journal of Positive Psychology. So big thanks to all of that. We're also going to cover some of the books that you've authored. So I don't know how, it must be all the California sun that gives you all that energy to keep going and going and going.
No, it's gratitude that gives me the energy. Gratitude is the fuel that keeps us growing and going every day. So I had a friend who was in his 90s and he swore that gratitude keeps you young, and he was very young. So I've got a long way to go to my 90s, actually not too long, but I'm hoping to make it. And gratitude plays a big role in that.
You're probably 85. We wouldn't even know it because you look so young.
Appreciate that.
Well, while we're on the topic, please let us all know what exactly is gratitude and how do you research it?
Yeah, so gratitude has been talked about and defined for centuries, and we're still changing how we think about it. You know, the crazy thing about psychology and science in general is that when we put it under the microscope or telescope or brain scanner or questionnaire or whatever, it changes its form, it changes its shape, and we tend to think of it as just thanks, really, just, this warm feeling of appreciation when you've received a benefit from someone has been kind to you or provided you with something you couldn't provide for yourself, and you say thank you. This feeling of goodwill wells up inside of you, and that's certainly part of it, but it's way beyond that. It's way beyond a feeling or an emotion. I like to think of it as terms of two stages. One is just affirming that we've received good things or goodness, that there is something good to celebrate, to be glad about, to be happy about. So that's affirmation. But then we recognize that this good thing came to us because of the efforts of other people or forces outside of ourselves. So I refer to this in a very kind of psychological, jargony way as other agency. There's agency outside of us that does something. We experience the benefit, and then we experience gratefulness or joy or affirming goodness, feeling of goodwill that's directed toward the source to whom we're grateful.
So in short, it's definitely a positive emotion. There's no negativity coming out of there.
It's a positive affirmation. The only time there's negativity is when we consider some of the implications of it, and the fact that it implies a sense of indebtedness. That is, when you are grateful to someone, you feel now indebted. Now, that's usually a good feeling, but sometimes we don't like to be indebted, right? 'Cause then we have to pay back the goodness. We start to worry about, okay, you've been kind to me, you've done a benefit for me, now how do I pay you back? And that makes people sometimes a little bit antsy, they feel a little bit of guilt about that, especially if it's hard for them to pay back that goodness. So that could be that component to it. But in general, it's a very, positive and desirable feeling.
And if we're going to talk in reference to North America, is that something that would be cultural in reference to taking it negatively in a service that I owe you something in a debt of gratitude or whatnot? Is that?
I think anyone who tends to view it in terms of reciprocity, in terms of conditionality. That is, you do something for me, and then I do something for you. You do something for me in return. So it underlies kind of the give and take, tit for tat reciprocity, which really, is what human relationships are based upon. Because life is all about giving, receiving, repaying benefits. So I don't think you could localize it to a particular region. I think it's just inherent in the nature of the concept.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that very detailed definition of something that not many people look into that fondly.
It's true. It's amazing.
Take it for granted that gratitude is gratitude or appreciation is appreciation.
It's lots of layers and levels to it. I'm finding out more and more.
It's everything in this positive psychology field is definitely the onion.
So true.
Layers. Now, can you explain to us a bit about how do you typically go about researching this?
Well, in our first studies now, which are almost 20 years old, when we first began
Wow.
this research, was in the late 1990s. And there was very little research on the topic of gratitude. In
Mm.
fact, that's how I got into this topic. I was actually assigned, this is crazy, assigned to become like the expert on gratitude. I was invited to this small conference, and everybody was thrown a different bone, kind of what we now consider positive psychology strengths or virtues. And there were like 6 of them at this meeting, 6 of these topics. And there was an expert, so-called expert, assigned to cover each one of these. So there were things like hope, and optimism and forgiveness and compassion and love and all the really good stuff, right? And gratitude is one of the ones in the pile. And nobody wanted to do it. There were no volunteers who stood up and said, I'll do gratitude, I'll take it. So it was like left over. And I guess I didn't, jump on the board soon enough. And that was the one that was left over. And they told me, okay, Emmons, you're going to be the expert on gratitude. You're going to go out there and find out what we know, what's been done so far. Well, it turned out nothing had been done. There was very little research. I mean, there was like 2 studies that went back to the 1920s. And so I figured I got to go out and do research project right away. I got to study this topic. I can't go to this meeting and stand up and say, we don't know anything. Thank you very much. Go to the next person. So I went out there and I started collecting. I started assigning research participants the job of keeping a gratitude journal. Well, maybe they should just write about it. I mean, let's just activate. We know to activate an emotion, you focus on it, right? You reflect on it, you think about it, you process it, you take thoughts about it, you turn those thoughts into words by writing down things that you're grateful for. And I did this experiment, and it was the only experiment I'd ever done up to that point. Yeah, I mean, I did 20 years of research. That was all surveys and correlational studies and interviews. I never used a randomized control assignment with different treatment conditions.
Which is the real deal, right?
That's the real deal. I mean, that's the gold standard of research, right? And that one study that was published now in 2003, I mean, there actually were several studies within that one article, but that's been cited as much as all my other stuff put together. So it's been amazing. Now, literally, I mean, thousands of participants in dozens of studies have been used this method on these individuals in gratitude journaling studies, comparing them across other conditions and seeing what effect it has on their well-being, on their happiness, on their relational health and physical well-being, and just all sorts of outcomes that we're interested in positive psychology.
Okay, a lot of our viewers are from the workplace, so we try to really get into that psyche of what it's like at work. I find with clients that we have, a lot of people are more comfortable to practice positive psychology related applications at home. But when it comes to the workplace, it's almost like we're not yet there in this safe container to be able to talk about even as simple as things like gratitude. So in your research, have you worked in any or have you applied the methodologies to anything in the workplace with employees?
Well, sure. I mean, we know that gratitude makes us happier and healthier as individuals. And so we know that workplaces are made up of individuals. If they're happier and healthier because of their practices, say their strategies or tactics for improving their well-being, that's going to improve the quality of their life at the workplace. That, in essence, should lead to happier and healthier workplaces, also more productive workplaces. What I've learned about gratitude can really be summed up in 2 words, and that is gratitude works, right? Every way we're finding.
I can see the bumper sticker
That's
now.
it, right? It works, right? I mean, that's it. 2 words, right? Just give my talks in 2 words, and I'm done, because that just summarizes it all. We're finding so many different ways in which gratitude drives good outcomes, leads to successful performance, better performance in so many different domains. And now studies are actually finding that in the workplace as well, that workplace outcomes, organizational outcomes, things that matter in business settings, like, employee morale and loyalty and turnover and absenteeism and productivity and profitability. I mean, the list goes, the key metrics that are typically examined, as you well know, show that gratitude affects these metrics as well. And so the trick is to find the entry points in organizations where they can leverage the power of gratitude, whether it's through employee wellness programs, whether it's through employee recognition, appreciation programs, whether it seems totally, accidental or random. There are non-obvious ways in which gratitude can work in the workplace. When it comes to things like health and wellness, for example. One of my favorite findings is that grateful people sleep better.
Yes. I
6
remember seeing
studies
that.
showing that gratitude improves sleep quality and sleep efficiency, and people are more active the next day and feel better, right? I mean, how many outcomes are driven by, a lack of sleep, negative effects that sleepiness causes, daytime sleep dysfunction at work, from accidents to
Hmm.
safety, just, affecting all sorts of things that the bottom line, I mean, there's billions of dollars somewhere. I have the stat showing, the connection between gratitude and sleep quality, and how sleep quality affects performance and profitability in the workplace. So that's a
Well, we know
non-obvious.
that the Huffington Post is all on that with Ariana. She's a big believer in sleep and taking naps and
I mean, restorative behaviors,
sort of.
gratitude facilitates, right? People take better care of their health, and that's going to make them more, function more optimally, whether it's at home, in their workplace, in their families, and across the board.
I can attest to your practice as well, because since the last time I had seen you on a conference with our CAP program, we had you had introduced the sleep suggestion as well for gratitude. The practice that I had adhered to was that before going to bed, I would kind of just closing my eyes, lie down, and think through my thoughts about what I was grateful for that day. As simple as that, right? And I can feel my parasympathetic nervous system calming everything down, as in the sort of more anxious thoughts of the day. Did I get that done? Have I did enough? Blah, blah. They're no longer echoing in my head, because I'm focusing on stuff that is fueling me with more pleasant thoughts to
Positive,
lull me to sleep.
Positive pre-sleep cognitions, they call that, much more conducive to becoming relaxed and falling asleep. Every time I give a talk to different audiences, whether it's healthcare or other settings, one of the questions I ask: how many people would say they get sufficient sleep each night? And never more than 2 or 3 hands go up in these rooms. I mean, people are just collectively sleep deprived. And you think this seems like such a simple, easy practice, right? You see that it works for you. We've seen that in our research, and the amount of sleep medication that people take is just overwhelming, right? And then all the side effects of that.
Yeah.
That's not to say that, counting blessings is going to immediately work for everybody. But I think it's got something to do with it. I think it would be wrong to say it's got nothing to do with better sleep, based on what we know now, 6 studies, and probably there's going to be more of that.
And hey, what I love about what you do the most is that it doesn't cost anything. You don't have to go and do a 6-month training. You just tap into gratitude on the spot, in the present moment, being mindful of it, and you're
totally self-initiated. I mean, you maintain it, you do it on your own, maintain it on your own. And so as far as we could tell, very little negative side effects.
I know you started off by saying that the gratitude research sort of, that calling fell onto your lap. But in retrospect, it was probably one of the best constructs you could have researched, because from my perspective, I see it as a foundation all across the board, whether we're talking about psychological capital, whether we're talking about even love and kindness meditations. I see it pop up everywhere. There's all this, and the big thing for me is that I associate gratitude to the opposite of being in a scarcity theory of a mindset. And I think that in organizations, we're constantly driven through that scarcity theory mindset. There isn't enough. We don't have enough time to do our work. We don't have enough money to do our resources. We don't have enough resources to deliver our projects, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
And the antidote to that is definitely the abundance approach. And how do we tap into that? Gratitude is the key. I love it.
I mean, deficit, deprivation, disappointment, all the terrible D's, dysfunction. Right? I mean, gratitude rescues us from that, from negativity, from resentment, from, a profound sense of entitlement, all these things which can rob us of joy in the moment. Right. I just think I agree that there's so much power in amplifying good outcomes, positivity, and in reducing and rescuing us from negativity. And then there's the connective component that you mentioned, to the relational aspect of it, the link to compassion, the link to kindness, the link to generosity, giving back. So you have the internal emotional benefits, but then you have the external relational benefits as well. It really is the relationship strengthening emotion that connects us and takes us out of our own your own little world, own little shell in this selfie-saturated society. And you guys start to focus on the good that other
Sorry,
people
I need to take a picture of us. Can you just give me a second?
Well, sure, we all do, right?
I just need to temporarily disconnect our connection so I can take a picture. I hear you 110%. I know that in the corporate trainings that we deliver, high quality connections is an important discussion in the workplace. So getting everyone back together, and appreciation, gratitude, easiest way to do that. I give little tips of using Post-its, instead of just thoughtlessly saying, yeah, thanks, mate, whatever, actually putting a little of effort into it, writing a couple words on a Post-it, going to their desk, looking them in the eye. I know that your research was originally based on the journaling with and writing out the three things you're most grateful for, and then even, I believe, presenting it in person. But at this, I would like to ask, in this day and age where we have so much technology at our hands, are there ways that we can still tap into gratitude, but be a bit more practical? Like, I encourage people to even take a video of themselves and send the video saying thank you if they can't be there in person.
I mean, the letter writing exercise is very powerful. You write a note of thanks to someone and send it to them. Surely you can send it through emails or through other, modalities. And sometimes we get too hung up on how to do it as opposed to content. And people ask me all the time, what's the best way to journal for gratitude? How often do you need to do it? And how long should you do it? And should you write it down? And what color should your journal be? And how many lines on each page? And all these things which are, totally, not even at the center of what's really important. And that is just turning your mind to the ways in which you're supported by other people, whether it's, on a moment to moment or daily, or even just think of that one person who lit a spark in you, right? Your mentor, your coach, somebody who supported you, somebody who, made your dream their dream and helped you to do that. And just acknowledging that, just praising that person publicly. Right?
Crazy, yeah.
On your social media, whatever, is just a way of, I think, it's just a way of living in truth is how I call it, right? Because we're not self-made people. We like to think so. We think we're self-sufficient, but as far as I know, nobody ever gave birth to themselves, right? Nobody ever fashioned themselves out of nothing, right? So we're profoundly dependent upon other people to do things for us that we just can't do for ourselves. So gratitude makes sense. It's the right thing to do.
And there's so much research out there that why we evolved to be in social networks and to be with people, and it's the glue that keeps us together, the gratitude. Well, I'm on board. I would love to get more people on board. So I was curious, if I was in an elevator with a CEO tomorrow, what would be a quick elevator pitch that I could pass on to her in order to get them on board with gratitude training, tapping into gratitude in the culture of the workplace?
Yeah, well, I speak a lot to medical groups and healthcare settings, and hospitals and so forth. And I can tell you what works there, and that is just to demonstrate relevance, because there's still a barrier to studying some of these positive psychology type topics, which can be seen as too squishy, too soft, nice things, but just kind of like luxuries that we can't really afford. And if you show them ways in which these things matter, right? The ways in which they impact the bottom line, real hard outcomes, whether it's in the domain of health, whether it's domain of workplace efficiency or productivity or whatever, then you realize that it's a luxury that, you can't afford to overlook. You can't afford to minimize, right, or deny. And the data are coming out on a regular basis, right? Just whether it's in the domain of employee wellness or health, or one of my favorite findings is in terms of employee theft, retail theft, which is massive. I see the statistics and I don't believe that. They say that it's a 42 billion with a B, problem each year that companies are ripped off by their employees, right?
Wow.
And
And
that's,
that's full on entitlement, I
I mean,
imagine.
that's entitlement. I mean, it's a manifestation of
Mhm.
resentment or revenge or retaliation or aggression, whatever it
Sticking it
is.
to the
Right?
man.
Yeah. We know that gratitude reduces aggression by as much as
Mm.
25 to 30%. So even if, half of that was related to employee theft, you're talking, about, a third of 42 is $4 to $7 billion could possibly be reduced potentially by creating gratitude programs, appreciation, recognition programs within organizations that would impact something that, affects all of us because it changes the prices of products and goods and services. So that's the sort of thing, convincing people that it
I
matters.
think that sounds beautiful. I mean, you pulled it out on a fly, and that sounds great to me. We'll have to try it out.
And there's also, I think all the challenges and the myths that exist. People think that, if I'm grateful, that means somehow I'm not going to get credit for doing my job, right? And so there's those sorts of things. Or what does it mean when the organization is grateful to me? When I get gratitude from my supervisor, you think that might be a good thing, right? That's a desirable. Everybody wants that, but it might be seen in a negative light depending upon how the context of it. Right? Maybe it's just it could be seen as a way of extracting more work out of me. Oh, I'm so grateful that you stayed overnight, over weekend and working late at night to finish this project, as a way of kind of reinforcing the behavior. Now, it's, of course, great. It's better that the supervisor showed gratitude than didn't show it, but it could be seen as sort of a tactic to extract more work rather than just to magnify the goodness and appreciation of the employees.
It's the onion. There's many layers to it. And like everything, gratitude is a tool, and it can be misused, unfortunately, in the wrong hands. But hopefully more people will use it appropriately. Awesome. What about, let's talk about your books now, because we're going to be wrapping up, and I'm sure that there are individuals who want to be looking a bit more in detail at your work. I know you have the little book of gratitude, which
Well, I
is a great
started with a
addition
really
to the
big
desk.
book some dozen years ago. I don't know, it's somewhere behind me on the shelf. But the Psychology of Gratitude was this big,
Mm,
multiple chapter, different components, and
the
so
Bible.
that was the big one, right? And I've written a couple of the trade, but now the most recent one is this little one. Actually, my books are getting smaller and smaller, which is really kind of weird phenomena because as we learn more and more about something, you think it would get bigger, but actually it's getting smaller because, I mean, people are busy, right? And they don't have time to wade through hundreds of pages of research findings to find that one
Mm.
small kernel or morsel that can really benefit them. So I put together this little book of gratitude. I mean, basically you can't tell, but it's like 5 by 7. That's the trim size of the book, right? And it's little tiny pages, but really it's about exercises and practices. There are 35 specific exercises and practices designed to help a person cultivate more gratitude on a regular basis. And the book is also highly illustrated, so there's really nice pictures throughout that are designed to document and illustrate different things like connection.
Mm.
So it's a fun little book.
Well, of course. And that's so important. Right? You got to keep it visual, keep it short, keep it concise. I always think of Einstein, if you haven't said it in a short way, in simple way, then you probably don't understand it. So to me, the fact that you've now created the little book of gratitude means you know exactly what you're talking about.
I hadn't even planned to write it, but I realized that I gave talks the last couple of years. There's a lot that hasn't been said yet, and we need to say that and have the most
We
impact
do.
on people.
I want to keep hearing you say it up on the conference podiums. I'm going to keep saying it in the workplaces. We've got Christmas coming around the corner, so we'll have in our link below a link to your book in case anyone wants to offer that as a gift. I know it would be a great kind of place to put it in your office desk. So if anyone's having any burnouts, any kind of not burnouts per se, but sort of stressful moments where they're stuck in entitled mindsets, or they're just needing a better sleep, relax themselves at night,
Everything. I
take a
mean,
look at the book.
just making life lighter, easier,
Mm.
freer, and fuller. That's kind of the goal of gratitude and gratefulness practices. That's what they do. And who doesn't want to be free, right?
110%. One last thing I'd love to know. So what I'm doing, bringing this information from the positive psychology world into the workforce, into the workplaces. Gratitude, love the concept, love the construct. One of my firsts to bring in. if I was to move on to another construct, another topic, what would you think I should? What would you think would be a good next entry point? Who do you think would be a good candidate to offer to interview to bring their knowledge and their research into the workplace?
I think the concept that's getting a lot of attention these days and a lot of traction is that of humility, especially in organizations and work in leadership, the humble leader. Right? We know that humility has really as many good findings as there are for gratitude. There's nearly as many for humility. And it's also one of those underestimated concepts that seems so modest and so unassuming, so humble. We're learning more and more ways in which humility works in organizations. And I think that's a foundation for gratitude. I think it's a foundation for a lot of other qualities, especially interpersonal ones like compassion. Without humility, you wouldn't have these. You just you wouldn't put yourself on a level playing field with other people. I think that seems to be the key to why some of these concepts really have the power that they do. So find yourself a humility expert, and I
haven't come across anyone who's studying humility in-depthly.
Take a look at the work of someone like Joshua Hook, who's at the University of North Texas. There is Justin Barrett, some of his work on intellectual humility. So humility can mean different. It could be interpersonal humility, where you consider other people equal to you. But then there's intellectual humility, which is almost like a curiosity. So like Todd Kashdan, who you probably know, studies that more the intellectual, being open, curious, kind of willingness to learn seems to underlie
growth mindset.
Right, exactly.
I can totally see how that would align with the workplace. There's definitely a lot of ego in the corporate world. So a bit of humility might balance things out just nicely.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Bob. I really appreciated this interview. You have all my gratitude. And I wish you a really nice holiday season with your lovely family that I see so much on Facebook.
Appreciate that. Probably too much, but
I can definitely tell you're very grateful for your family.
I like to broadcast my gratitude to them.
Hey, hands down.
Thank you. Always good to see you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Take care. Cheers.